The day, I've got nothing more to say. At the end of my line, there's a clearing.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Jesus Guzman, and I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director with Generation Housing, and I'm really excited to welcome everyone with us this evening. So just to get started, I want to make sure that we go through a few housekeeping items for tonight's webinar. First, we do have Spanish interpretation available. So if folks are interested in accessing that, we encourage people to hit the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. Este evento está siendo transmitido en español. Para poder acceder a este servicio, opriman el botón al fondo de la pantalla. Next, I want to just make a quick note about participation this evening. We'll have a moderated discussion, and Elizabeth in a moment will help us go through what this evening will look like, but there will be an audience Q&A section, and to participate, we want to encourage people to go ahead and drop any questions that you may have for our candidates this evening in the Q&A section, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. So just to review our agenda, we're going through right now a few introductory remarks. Next, I'll hand it over to our moderator, and then Elizabeth will introduce the candidates for the evening. The candidates will then have a chance to offer opening remarks. We'll spend most of the evening in the moderated discussion. We do have a set of prepared questions that will help facilitate our conversation, and then we'll make sure that we leave some time as well for audience Q&A. And then lastly, we will close out the evening with some closing remarks by the candidates, and we'll make sure we get everybody out of here by 8 o'clock as well. So, and next, I just want to offer a few notes about the purpose of tonight's event. This is our sixth installment in the Candidate Forum series, The Future of Housing, and we've been really excited to host these conversations across Sonoma County. We're really grateful to have this opportunity to discuss the future of housing in Petaluma. And tonight we're hoping to center the challenges that families face in trying to afford housing in Sonoma County. And most importantly, what we can do to improve housing affordability. Many of us have seen the statistics and heard the personal stories of families that are paying more than half of their income on rent and who struggle to pay the bills month to month, week to week. We also know a lot of folks, many of us personally or friends and family who work far away, commute long distances, many of us who have to live together in overcrowded conditions just to make the rent pan out. So it's housing for many of us is an extremely important topic. And I think with COVID-19, the need for safe and affordable housing has only increased. Again, if COVID-19 has taught us anything about housing and health, it's that we can't shelter in place without shelter. Okay. So the lack of housing, the lack of housing that is affordable to all of our residents is one of the biggest challenges that our residents and our local leadership face. But it's also one of the biggest opportunities to improve people's lives, health, and our environment. So tonight we want to emphasize and center housing as an integral part of our future and an important issue for voters to see prioritized by our local leadership. So with that, I want to just offer a brief reminder as we transition to our discussion that tonight's event is strictly informational in nature, and it's an opportunity to create a platform and a space for our candidates to share with all of you their vision for housing. So with that, I want to turn to our moderator for this evening and introduce Elizabeth Escalante. She is the president of Wine Country Young Democrats. Elizabeth will be moderating our discussion for this evening. And Elizabeth, welcome so much, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Right. And thank you, Jesus. And thank you to our candidates running for, for this very important seat in our city of Petaluma. This actually has a lot of meaning for me too, as a Petaluma resident. So I can't wait to get started and hear all of your responses. We're going to start with opening statements from each candidate. Each candidate will be offered 1.5 minutes for that opening statement. And in the moderated discussion, we'll ask anywhere between 2 to 3 questions with at least 1 minute to respond. I'd like to introduce the City Council candidates for Petaluma. The residents of Petaluma will be electing 3 candidates this year, so 3 open seats. And tonight, we are excited to have joining us Dr. Dennis Pasake, Mike Healy, Susan Kirks, Gabe Kearney, Lizzie Wallach, Brian Barnacle, and Kathy Miller. Unfortunately, Robert Conklin is not able to join us, although with an invitation extended to him. But let's begin. And so next we'll start, as I mentioned, with those opening statements. We'll begin with you, Dennis, and then Mike, Susan, Gabe, Lizzie, and Brian, and close opening remarks with Kathy. There will be a reminder of that order midway through.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Can I go ahead?
Yes.
So my wife and I have lived in Petaluma for 29 years. We raised our 2 children here, and I care deeply about the health of this community. These are tumultuous times. They call for new and visionary leadership. The incumbents have served on the council for 2 terms, yet we're still struggling with the same old problems. For too long, the incumbents have represented the interests of developers rather than yours. We must be able to refocus on the challenges that threaten our community: the climate crisis, the personal and economic fallout of our pandemic, a reckoning with equity and justice, and affordable housing. I'm a physician with master's degrees in engineering and public health. I've demonstrated that I can absorb and synthesize large quantities of information and identify solutions. I have hands-on experience responding to emergencies. I've rolled up my sleeves and worked with members of this community to address our common problems. As a council member, I'll act on the same principles that guided my practice of medicine. My decisions will be evidence-based and person-centered. I will offer and actively support creative solutions to old problems, and I'll make sure that those decisions serve the community and the environment, not special interests. It's time for a change, and I hope to earn your vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I also just noticed, welcome, Robert, Mr. Robert Conklin, who is also a candidate for Petaluma City Council. What a pleasant surprise. Welcome. We are just giving our opening remarks at this time. Thank you, Dennis, again, and we will go to Mike Healy.
Thank you. So thank you for hosting this event. And I'm going to tell a couple of stories, because I don't know that I'll have an opportunity to do this again as the evening progresses. But the first one, I've been a strong advocate for affordable housing my entire time on the city council. And the thing people need to realize is affordable housing is not easy. It's a real challenge. It's even more of a challenge in the post-redevelopment world. But you measure success one project at a time. And I'll tell you one story. The Buckaloo Apartments next to the police station, run by a lovely nonprofit out of Marin County. And those homes, those apartments are for adults, low-income adults with mental disabilities. And we had huge pushback from the community, the neighborhood, when that was being pushed, when that was proposed. It came to the council at a time where we had a vacancy. It was clear that it was going to die on a 3-3 tie. So I made the motion to approve the project. And then I voted against my own motion, so it failed 2-4. And the reason I did that was I knew that I could make a motion for reconsideration if I was with the majority. And I did that at the following meeting. And by the time it came back for reconsideration, the vacancy had been filled and the new council member voted to approve it, and we approved it 4-3. So I only got to one more story. I'll save the other one for later. But that shows my commitment to affordable housing in Petaluma. And I would add, there have been no complaints from the neighborhood about that project ever since. It's been wonderfully managed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We go to Susan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm Susan Kirks, and I'm really glad to be with you tonight to discuss how we can address housing, providing affordable housing for quality of life for our citizens. To be able to know I have somewhere to sleep, somewhere to go, somewhere to call my space, as we all do all we can to survive and hope to thrive for ourselves and our families. This is a human right and a philosophy that requires action, follow through, and creativity. In Petaluma, we're beginning our general plan update, and the general plan update will be our agreed upon guide for all aspects of living in Petaluma. For housing and transportation, we look at buildable land, areas for redevelopment, densities, and what to do about it. The reality of addressing climate change and the choice to prioritize equity are the lenses through which we will make decisions. Petaluma needs more affordable housing, and this is one of my highest priorities and will be if I'm trusted with your vote. You have my word on that. We also need to look at quality of life and plan for manageable utility expenses, access to transportation and services in our neighborhoods, proximity to schools, and access for green space and open space, a small garden, access to a community garden, access to nearby services, so that we have places to live, can manage our stressors, and thrive in neighborhoods we can call our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Gabe?
Thank you, Lizzie, and thank you to Generation Housing for hosting this evening. My name is Gabe Kearney. I currently serve on the Petaluma City Council, where I've been serving since 2011. Prior to joining the City Council, I served on the Community Development Commission for the county, representing Petaluma. In that role, we distributed money for low-income affordable housing projects throughout the county, as well as homeless services here in Sonoma County. Prior to joining that commission, I was on the Mental Health Board for the County of Sonoma for 8 years. And in between serving on the Mental Health Board and the Community Development Commission, I served on the Board of Directors for Bucklew Housing, which Mike Healy referenced, and was on the Board of Directors when we got that project approved in Petaluma to provide housing for folks with mental illness. Through my time on the City Council, I voted to bring affordable housing projects to our community at different phases of the economic scale, so we can have a diverse and open community that brings people across different economic levels and affords them the opportunity to move to Petaluma. We do need to continue to build more housing that is affordable at the lower end of the range, and I continue to support that going forward. Thank you very, very much for your time, and thank you to the candidates for a respectful evening of discussion tonight.
All right, thank you, Gabe. And we go to Lizzie. Oh, you are muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much for having us here. I'm honored. We increase community engagement when we bring it to the forefront of the public realm. It must be a part of what we do at our core. I've been actively engaged in this work in our local school community, and I've worked in architecture for over 10 years now. And community engagement is one of the most critical parts of any project. I have experience working in partnerships with mayor's offices and different jurisdictions throughout the state, developing complex community projects that span neighborhoods and require deep partnerships with merchants associations and various neighborhood associations. I love the positive strength in these relationships. For me, this is the foundation of a successful project when we're all working together and understanding what all the diverse residents want before the pen is even put to paper. As I said, I bring with me my experience as a mother of 2 small children currently moving through the Petaluma City school system, in which I am actively engaged with the Petaluma Tide community, which is the team for inclusivity, diversity, and equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. We go to Brian.
Thank you to Generation Housing and to the Wine Country Young Dems and everybody who's watching. Like many cities in California, Petaluma has struggled to build affordable housing. What's more concerning to me than the performance is that we're not doing nearly enough to get ourselves back on the right track. And I'm running for council because I know we can do better, and I know that my experience in planning, in policy, and in creative financing can be helpful. In Sonoma County right now, it takes $40 an hour to afford the median rent. The Sonoma County Grand Jury report highlighted numerous issues with homelessness, including youth homelessness, which is on the rise in an alarming way. Meanwhile, COVID-19 and wildfires are compounding these problems, and we're going to be dealing with them for the next several years. We need to start pushing forward with bold new housing policies so that we can house people affordably, we can address climate change, create a vibrant local economy, and protect our farms on the outside of our communities. The challenges are changing. We're not dealing with a suburban paradigm anymore. We're dealing with infill, and that's a very different type of development. It requires a much greater attention to safety and traffic impacts, displacement, accessibility, and other factors that suburban development doesn't. I do not think that our current council is taking this shift seriously, and I feel strongly that we need people with training and experience in community development, not just development. I'm really looking forward to this discussion tonight. Thank you again.
Thank you, Brian. We go to Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting tonight. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Kathy Miller. I have lived on the east side of Petaluma for the last 20 years. I've raised my children here. I've been a member of the Petaluma City Council for the last 8 years, and before that, I was on the Planning Commission. I have professional experience in land use and planning, and am looking forward to putting that experience to work again for this city. With respect to affordable housing, I am very much in support of building affordable housing of all types. And if you look around and look at the projects that we've done and the projects that are in the pipeline, you will see that we are building affordable housing here. It's not enough. We are trying to build more. It is difficult to build, but we are in the process of building a new PEP housing facility for seniors and veterans that is close to transit. We have other affordable housing developers who are interested in building in our town, and we're working with them to bring those projects forward. And we're also building affordable housing within market rate housing and working with the Sonoma Land Trust to have affordable home ownership in this town. And so we are addressing affordable housing, and I will continue to address affordable housing if reelected to the City Council, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Last but not least, Robert, if you can give an opening statement for 1.5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Robert Conklin. I'm a lifelong Petaluma resident. I also live on the east side as well as Kathy. I'm for affordable housing, with a focus on transit-based, because any way you can help a working family cut down costs and reduce miles traveled is a good thing. Not only do I, represent working families, I am a working family. Both me and my wife work. We have pretty good jobs, and it's a struggle every day to stay in the town I grew up in. I'm here to represent working families and people just like me. And with my view on the projects, I can interject a little of the common everyday working family perspective that the council definitely needs. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, candidates, for your opening statements. So we'll move on to the moderated discussion part. And let's start with giving each candidate 1.5 minutes to reply. And then we'll see with our time from there. The state and regional councils of government are undergoing a process to determine the allocation of housing that needs to be built over the coming years. The process is commonly known as RHNA or RHNA, and many cities are expecting a significant increase over prior years in the amount of housing that will need to be built. Seeing the initial figures last week for the first time, Petaluma has been tentatively assigned 2,110 homes, up from 745 in the current cycle, in the amount of housing that it is expected to help accommodate from 2023 to 2031. Though these figures are not final, how would you approach the need to accommodate greater housing production to meet our local and regional needs? We will start with Brian, and then Lizzie, Susan, Gabe, and then let's Robert, Kathy, Dennis, and then we'll close with Mike.
Great, thank you. Well, one thing that I caught my attention about the draft RHNA numbers is that the county is up 919%. Petaluma is up 182%. So we're looking at, I don't think those numbers are final. I don't see how the county can increase almost 1,000% in housing production. And I don't think that we should be putting homes back in areas that have burned. So I think that we might need to take on even more housing than what's there. In terms of how I would go about this is being proactive, identifying the sites. I think we need to start looking at creating specific plans so we can work more proactively with developers and we can streamline processes. I've talked a lot about grant writing and that we need to be identifying those sites that qualify for grant funds, things that are close to transit, things that require infrastructure, and making sure that we're leveraging state funds. I also think things like changing our impact fees from $1 per unit to $1 per square foot metric is how you get to affordable by design. That changes the profit model for developers from building fewer, larger units to building more modest size and higher volume. So, you know, those are just some of the things. It's not rocket science. These aren't new things. They've been around for a while. We just haven't done them. And, you know, that's what I would advocate for on day one. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Lizzie?
Thank you. Yes, and I'd have to say, to start off, I agree with Brian. He's mentioned it before in previous forums about bringing on a grant writer on the team, and I absolutely support that. And I think it's a great idea. I also agree with what he said about impact fees. You know, I think a lot of it is starting a conversation, right? It's starting a conversation with the city as leaders and the developers, and really, what are we designing and building for the community? And I think that so far, up until now, we've kind of been at the wrong table for the discussion. And so to just sit down at the right table and say, what are we doing? Who are we building homes for? We're looking at affordable housing that spans, you know, quite a large set of demographics. And really, how are we going to start to weave housing into our infrastructure and connect it to services and transportation? So when we talk about affordable housing, we talk about the great need for an affordable lifestyle, and that it absolutely must be transit-oriented development. We need to get people out of cars in order to create an affordable lifestyle. We need to have folks living close to their jobs, schools, shops, services. Looking at how can we, you know, how does it actually become slightly harder to use your car and more convenient to be using public transportation? Can we look at models of car shares and bike shares when we're talking about transit-oriented development? You know, I sat in on an interesting presentation last night. Thanks.
Sorry. Susan?
Thank you. I would agree with the initial comment about the numbers that have been released. The Sonoma County numbers are stunning, and the numbers for Petaluma are also high. So I think in the context of planning, from a policy standpoint, I would look at usable land, where it is. I like what Portland, Oregon did recently. They have, to help with their affordable housing and housing needs, there's a rezoning for, I think it's a maximum of four units on already developed properties where there might be a single family home and the ability to add units. For us in Petaluma, we have the central area, Central Petaluma specific plan. There are plans for pretty high density housing, which will help us meet some of our goals. And working with the nonprofits, MidPen, actually in particular, I'm really impressed by MidPen, who's working with the city now and working with all the other affordable housing nonprofits to do everything we can to identify areas. In our zoning, we can plan for mixed use and do a variety of combinations for mixed use and wherever we can get to get affordable housing in area. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. And we go to Gabe.
Thank you. The numbers are daunting and it's going to be a heavy lift. But one of the things we need to do is continue to have the discussion with the local landowners that might have properties that are being underutilized at this time, to work with them on how we can better utilize the land moving forward. There was a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the City Council a little over a week ago, in which we looked at kind of a general overview of how we might approach this process, but much more conversation needs to be done in order to come up with a plan of how we're going to move forward as a community to allow for us to hit these numbers that have been identified and allocated for us, and how we do it in a way that's equitable and allows for folks to live close to where they work or close to where there's transit, so they aren't creating more traffic and aren't increasing the greenhouse gas emissions that we're trying to combat so much going forward. And we also need to look at increasing the affordable housing units at the lowest end of the spectrum, which is an area we have struggled with, in coming up with more funding streams of how we can build those units is important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabe. Kathy.
Thank you. So, we have to look at, all of the area in Petaluma. We want to look at infill sites. We have seen that our community doesn't really have any interest in expanding or going outside of our urban growth boundary. So, we want to protect our farmlands around the city. So infill is what we're looking at. And there are sites in town that have been identified for affordable housing. And we're working on doing that and making sure that it's transit oriented, so people can, again, get out of their cars. They can walk and bike and take public transportation to work, because hopefully they're able to afford to live and work in the same community. We're working with lots of affordable housing providers. I mentioned PEP previously. We are also working with MidPen on an affordable development, and we are requiring, we're requiring 15% affordable in market rate housing, which we were not able to do legally until a couple of years ago. And as soon as we were able to do it, that was something that we, as a council, voted to do and have been doing ever since. So the RENA numbers are staggering. It is going to be a heavy lift for us, but we need to do it. We need to get this housing built, and I look forward to moving forward on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Robert?
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with the Petaluma residents, and they're under the assumption that the city council controls whether we build or not. They say stop all building until the traffic problem is taken care of. That's not how it works, and there's some pretty hefty numbers coming up due to the wildfires and other situations. Right now, I mean, we really need to be focusing on transit-oriented, high density. People don't want to bump out because of the nice green fields surrounding our town. I don't necessarily disagree with them about not bumping out, but we're going to have to infill. and we're going to have to be very, very selective and just maximize that footprint, whether it's mixed use or, might not meet the aesthetics of Petaluma, but some kind of, I guess, call it utilitarian housing, where it's just modest, small units that can house people that live and work in Petaluma. Thank you. Oh, and nonprofits.
Thank you, Robert. Dennis?
Thank you. Again, just to reiterate, I do believe housing is a human right, and I believe that everyone who works here should be able to live here. I just went looking for this in the last general plan a few days ago, and was I'm happy to say that I found, without going through the whole thing, twice in the old general plan that actually doesn't use those words, but it makes a statement equivalent to what I just said, that everyone who works here should be able to live here. I also, it hasn't been mentioned yet, I don't think that, the way I'm looking at where this is going to go with the RHNA numbers is that 50% of this housing is going to need to be affordable. And I think it's important to be aware of that number, that 50% of every unit we build is going to need to be affordable, and that we can't do that just with 15% inclusionary affordable housing. One other thing I'd like to be honest about is that everyone says it takes too long to build here, and we need more development options. The next council, I think, needs to be proactive and intentional in bringing community groups, landowners, homeowners, and committed affordable developers to the table. I think if we continue to let developers call the tune for our city and skip this critical step of bringing folks together, we end up with the wrong developments in the wrong places. Again, as Lizzie said, it's all about engagement in everything the council does.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay.
Yeah. And finally, Mike?
Thank you. Great question. Minute and a half, not nearly enough. But jumping from 745 units in our current RHNA allocation to 2,100 plus in the next one is going to be a major shock for us. And bear in mind that the new general plan will cover 2 RHNA cycles. So we'll have to plan for double that in the next general plan, which we're getting underway on now. There's a great hope to stay inside the urban growth boundary, but let me just make a few points. I do agree that an inventory of vacant and underutilized commercial sites is the way to start. The magnitude of the challenge is such that we cannot just cherry pick what I will call Goldilocks sites that are, not too hard, not too soft, not too hot, not too cold, close to transit, away from the river. It's really going to be an all hands on deck situation. And that's going to be the reality. We can't rule out sites like Sid Commons. We can't rule out sites like the Corey Heights remainder parcel next to the Petaluma Boulevard South traffic circle. I do agree that we need to find strategies for increasing the yield on commercial properties above the 15% that AB 1505 currently allows. And I'm willing to look at right-sizing impact fees, but I would remind the challengers that it was our previous progressive mayor, David Glass, who castigated anyone who failed to support raising those impact fees to the absolute maximum.
Thank you, Mike. All right, our next question. Each candidate will be allowed 1 minute to answer this one. And yeah, for the interest of time. Petaluma's urban growth boundary was first approved in 1998 and extended again in 2010, with over 2/3 of the vote in support. It has proven to be a popular measure with local residents for more than 3 decades now. As such, what strategies would you propose to help spur infill housing with the urban growth boundary? Some of us have already touched on this a little bit, but we'll start with Brian, then Kathy, Susan, Lizzie, Dennis, Mike, Gabe, and Robert. Oh, and yes, we will do responses for 1 minute. All
right. So I am I mean, one of the reasons why I'm running is because I'm concerned about encroaching on our green fields and our farms. This is what drives me. So I am absolutely in favor of infill housing. The impact fees, it's not about jacking them up to a certain level. It's about changing the actual metric. So that's the little change there. And it's a really important one, because when I was sitting down with a developer who's a friend, and we were looking at a pro forma, and the impact fees to deliver twice the number of units were actually, that were smaller, were twice as much to deliver more modest sized units. And so it's really important that we look at that. We also need to look at restructuring our density bonus, because right now developers are not, they're not feeling encouraged to do the things that we want them to do with our density bonus. So we need to go farther than the state programs there and do more. So, yeah.
Thank you, Brian. All right, and we go to Kathy.
Thank you. So I am in favor of the urban growth boundary. It has been clear to me for as long as I've been on the council that it's something that's very important to the people who live in this community. And that being said, again, what we have to be looking at is infill development. And we've got to identify sites that are underutilized, repurpose them for housing. We need to continue to work with nonprofit affordable housing developers to get additional housing built. And we also need to continue with our plan where we have inclusionary affordable housing within market housing. I like the mix of having both types of affordable housing in town. And I think it's important that we continue doing that. And as I said, hitting these RHNA numbers are going to be very difficult, but it's something that we have to do, and we need to provide people with a place to live where they work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Susan.
Thank you. I think it was yesterday, Governor Newsom signed an executive order mandating that 30% of California's land and water will be preserved and conserved. And conservationists are really, really happy about that. And I think when I read that, it actually made me think of our urban growth boundary. And I was involved in every single meeting, every phase of our last general plan. So I know how often it came up. And one of the things I said in a prior forum, which I'd like to reiterate, is I want to support the urban growth boundary. We need to keep it where it is. We also need to look at areas that may need even more protection. There's this thing called the urban separator path that is in some areas of our urban growth boundary that is really meaningless for some particular properties. So when we get into the new general plan, I'd really like to examine our urban growth boundary in every area and be sure we have the right configuration. Thank you.
Thank you. And we go to Lizzie.
Thank you. Yes, I fully support the non-extension of the urban growth boundary. I think that we have a large amount of potential with infill sites that are not being utilized to their capacity. And so I think it's really a conversation of identifying those sites, taking a look at our current zoning, looking at building some flexibility within that zoning. And I would also like to add, it's really a conversation about density and design and getting creative in how we're thinking about the housing units. I think that we can't take a previous model and say to a developer, okay, now make that for a quarter of the price. We have to really start to rethink how we're utilizing space and what these spaces can be. So looking at a smaller footprint, looking at green space woven in between, looking at amenities and services so that it's all working together. And I would also like to add that I am a strong believer that we absolutely need to have mixed income.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Thanks.
Yeah. Dennis?
Thank you. I'm certainly in favor of maintaining the urban growth boundary and pushing and concentrating on infill development. I like to add something to what Brian said about the impact fees per square foot. I think is not just doing it by the square foot, but at present, developers pay less for each square foot they add to a unit. I mean, for practical purposes, that's the way it works. And we need to change that to get more modestly built housing so that the developer pays a little more for each square foot added to a unit. I don't think it's that difficult. I also think we need to redo our zoning, as I believe Susan mentioned earlier, per the Portland model, to make it more flexible. And again, this will work in favor of equity as well as allowing more affordable housing to be built.
Thank you, Dennis. Mike?
Thank you. Great question. So I demonstrated my commitment to staying within the urban growth boundary when the previous, the current general plan came through for review. At that time, the general plan of the urban growth boundary was to expire in 2018, and we were given a draft general plan that said, okay, we'll stay inside the urban growth boundary until 2018. And then after that, we'll go crazy and go beyond it. And I led the charge on the city council at the time to say, no. We actually want to stay inside the current urban growth boundary for the life of the current next general plan. And we did that with the current general plan. And that's why the urban growth boundary, the voters got the opportunity to extend it all the way from 2018 to 2025. So it's going to be a challenge to do that. But that's my goal. And I think the community wants and expects that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We go to Gabe.
Thank you, Lizzie. I have stated before, and I'll state again, I'm in support of the urban growth boundary. Looking at what infill projects we can do in our town oftentimes creates an awkward conversation with folks who have had an open field or open property next to where they live. But as we look at infill and how we're going to meet these numbers and making it so that when our kids are old enough to get their own house or own apartment, they have a place here in town that they can live. That's important to have the generational housing and allowing for people to age in place. That is very important for us. I will continue to look at what parcels in town we can best utilize to create housing opportunities and how we can better utilize the underutilized properties moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Robert?
There we go. One of the biggest challenges the city council does have is that most of the residents want their cake and eat it too. Every project that's going to be built is going to be met with some resistance. A lot of people right outside the city limits want to say in what they what happens within the city, which I don't necessarily oppose. I would like to keep those nice green spaces. There's a lot of nice little honey holes put projects so we can put some housing. There's one right in the middle of the town that I hope doesn't get messed with, and that's the fairgrounds. But I know a lot of people are looking at it to develop or put housing. And, as a person who grew up here, I don't think it's a very good idea. And once it's gone, it's gone. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Just a reminder that the audience may submit Q&A questions in that Q&A section. And you may also upvote any questions that are already asked. Our final question in this moderated section before we move on to Q&A. And then we will start with, so Robert, I'll have you begin. And then we'll go to Dennis, Lizzie, Kathy, Mike, Kathy, Brian, and then close with Susan. Affordable housing, which we define as deed-restricted housing that is available to lower-income families, often faces a myriad of challenges. Many in our community earn wages that are not enough to afford the high housing costs. So there's a clear need to build more affordable housing. As of the latest RENA progress report, Petaluma was struggling to meet its target for very low, and moderate income households. But beyond the entitlement process, financing affordable housing projects can be extremely complicated and difficult. Often, having local dollars available to leverage increases the chances of a project receiving state tax credits to complete the financing. How do you envision the city of Petaluma helping support the financing of affordable housing? And would a housing bond measure be part of that solution? Okay. And then 1 minute for each response, and we'll begin with Robert.
Yeah, we will definitely have to get a nice cozy relationship with the nonprofit builders about securing loans for the building. I mean, hopefully we can, some good Samaritans or angels can pop out of nowhere to help us fund these projects, because I know the city doesn't have any money. It's even myself as a person who makes a decent living along with my wife. I mean, it's hard, and I don't see how anybody, you know, making minimum wage, even two parents making minimum wage, could even afford an apartment in this town. It's very sad. I would love to have the perfect answer, but I don't. Just yeah, if we can get, like Brian and a lot of people have said, grant writers to try to shake those trees and find that money. It's the way we got to do it.
Thank you. Dennis.
Yes. A lot depends, I think, on whether the sales tax passes. Sales tax doesn't pass, the council is going to be scrambling immediately and cutting services, and we're going to have another crisis on top of what we have. But I'm definitely in favor of and would do everything I could to advocate an affordable housing bond, either in Petaluma, or I'm not sure that's possible because of maybe it is if we pass the sales tax measure. But in any case, I've heard some rumblings from the county that they're going to start to consider before the end of the year an affordable housing bond measure. I looked to what was passed in Alameda County as a model, just $15 per $100,000 of assessed valuation per property, not market value, assessed valuation. And they're starting a lot of projects already from passing that 4 years ago.
Thank you, Dennis. Lizzie.
Thank you. Yes. So as Dennis just said, I am on the same page when we're talking about Measure U. And as Brian had mentioned before, grant writing. And I would like to add, maybe there's an opportunity for incentives for donated land for, community land trusts. I think this is a time to really get creative. I think that I'm interested in the discussion of a housing bond, but with that, the design and the intention and the building of what we're talking about is so important to make sure that it's going to live longer than when that bond needs to be paid back. And so I really think that starting with a deep dive into the design and the partnerships is really where we need to be first and foremost on what it is we are actually building, ensuring that's going to last more than 30 or 50 years, and it will be worth the money that we have taken out. But I do think this is the time to get creative, and those would be some additional ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. We go to Kathy.
Thank you. So, we don't have at the city a lot of local dollars available to help. And if Measure U doesn't pass, we will have even less. So it's really critical that we get Measure U passed. With respect to a housing bond measure, I have heard that the county is looking at one, and I look forward to evaluating that and hearing what the county has to say about a housing bond measure. And we're going to have to be creative to get affordable housing built and to meet our RENA numbers, particularly in the very low and moderate. We do have housing coming online that addresses some of the deficiencies in those RENA targets. And we'll just have to keep continuing to work forward on meeting our RENA requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Brian.
I don't know that a bond is the answer to our affordable housing problems, but it might be. I've had some experience with social impact bonds when I worked with the city of Richmond to acquire dilapidated and vacant foreclosed properties that have been sitting for 10 years. And then the bond was used to acquire the properties, renovate them, and then resell them to first-time home buyers. And it was a great program. And my company's role was the clean energy aspects of it. And we were selling zero energy homes to first-time home buyers, equipped with electric vehicle chargers and all that great stuff, all electric homes. I think that we should be looking at some sort of a bond, but I totally agree with what Lizzie said, is that we need to know what we're trying to accomplish before we can take that stuff out. They're really complicated things, and there's not a one size fits all for these types of things.
Thank you, Brian. Susan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think this is one of those situations where Petaluma and all the cities in the county and the county working together collaboratively to explore all opportunities. I too have heard about the county bond and have been following that. I think that this is a situation where we really will have to reinvent our thinking as a city council, as elected officials. One thing that I'm interested in is partnering with the Sonoma County Ag and Open Space District with the existing sales tax, sometimes on properties that can receive open space funding, such as the one that my nonprofit helped save in Petaluma. There may be housing available there. There may be existing housing that can be rented to at an affordable rate to also provide habitat protection, public access, and gardening. So
thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll move on to the Q&A portion of our forum. So
Hello.
Oh my gosh. Wait, hold on. Did I miss someone? Yes, I did. Okay.
Mike.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So, these are certainly going to be challenges that require a lot of creativity because financing is key. And, I think a housing bond, whether at the local level, the county level, or at the Bay Area regional level, is something that could be looked at. People need to recognize that would likely be a 2/3 vote, which is a real challenge for measures of that kind. And you have to convince not just the people on this Zoom call, but people who are quite complacent and happy and don't feel the need in their personal lives. So it would require a remarkable outreach to get to that kind of support for a tax measure of any kind. I brought a prop tonight. I'm going to share it. This was the 2018 PEP Housing Senior Housing Hero Award, which I was awarded. I'm very proud of that. And it just shows the amount of effort that I put into trying to work on affordable housing in our community over the years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And my apologies for missing you, Gabe. Yeah, and my apologies to Gabe.
I think we're having such a good time tonight that we've lost track of the hour, right? And so it's understandable. We have to look at all the options available to us and explore every possible path. And many of the candidates tonight have brought up very good ideas, and I would not rule out any one of them as far as what options we can look to build affordable housing, so we can have folks that grow up here and want to live here and grow their families here can stay here. It's very important to me. I have been very fortunate in my career that I've been able to stay here in Petaluma, but I do commute just like many other people in our community. And so creating opportunities for others to be able to live and work closer to Petaluma is important. Opportunity zones is an option that we can look at that other communities have started to utilize, and I would be supportive of looking at that going forward. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Gabe. All right, and Yeah, so now it is time to I think we have at least time for one question from the audience. Candidates, your responses are optional. So please raise your hand to answer a question and you would have at least 1 minute to reply. The first question that comes up comes from Jerry LeBerg. What is the appropriate housing for people who are homeless in Petaluma? Lizzie, and then Susan and Kathy.
I would say it's housing that is connected to a larger infrastructure. And so I think when we're first looking at shelter, first and foremost is, but I think at the bare minimum is getting folks into a safe place to park if they're living in their cars. That's the bare minimum. But I would say if we're talking about housing for the unsheltered, we need to be talking about housing for the unsheltered that's also connected to services, because we need to look at this as an infrastructural issue. And so if we're talking about healthcare and mental services and job training, that's how we need to be looking at that question in totality. Thank you.
Thank you. We go to Susan, and then I see Mike's hand up. So Susan, Kathy, then Mike.
Thank you. We have really good nonprofit services here in Petaluma, and I applaud everyone affiliated with helping people who are unsheltered, people who have lost their homes, people who may be chronically homeless, and people who are homeless are human beings. And so we actually really need a really strong outreach component to help identify what is best for families, what is best for individuals, and facilitate helping them get into whatever situation that is, which goes back to our earlier discussion about a variety of different types of housing, different types of housing units, location near services. And this is a responsibility we have, and it's something that just to remember, homeless people are human beings who have differing needs, and that's how I would approach answering the question.
Thank you. Kathy, Mike, and then Dennis, I also saw your hand up. Oh, and then Brian.
Thank you. So we have really good services in Petaluma. We have COTS, and we have Petaluma People Services, and they work extensively with our homeless population to assist them with housing, assist them with medical care, with psychological care if they need it, to help them get into housing, to help them get jobs. COTS ran a program a few years ago and is still doing it, where they will put together a notebook for their clients that goes through, how to interview for a job, how to apply for a job, how to rent a place to live. And so they really work on doing that. And it's important, and we need to be, funding those services as best we can. And we need to do outreach and try and get people into the shelters and into housing as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
You waiting for me?
Yes, you may proceed.
Oh, thanks. I didn't hear that. So I was on the city council when the city supported the development of the construction of the Mary Isaac Center, which sits on a piece of city-owned land with a 99-year ground lease for $1 a year. I actually knew Mary Isaac. She was a lovely person. But at this point, we are demolishing the rest of the old wastewater treatment plant that surrounds the Mary Isaac Center, and I strongly support COTS expanding their campus so they can expand the number of clients they serve, and the types of services they provide, so that we can get people, off the creeks and the places where they're living now, which is not healthy for anyone. I actually served as a mentor in a COTS rent ride class one time. That was a great experience. I think other people should take advantage of that opportunity as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis, and then Brian.
Yes, I just wanted to put in a plug for Measure O. I think it's important to expand our civilian mobile crisis capability in terms of the homeless as well as the mentally ill. And I think that passing County Measure O will provide some help in this regard. I think that's important as well.
Thank you, Dennis, Brian, and then Gabe.
Oh, yes, on Measure O. I think that the services are really important. I'm specifically concerned about youth homelessness, and that nationally youth homelessness is down 4%, and in Sonoma County it's up 28%. And I worked in a homeless youth shelter in Oakland, volunteering, helping them with the job preparation, resume reviews, and things like that. And it's just incredibly important. And so when it's the type of housing, I think group housing is great. Group housing with services is essential. And we need to be looking at all kinds of opportunities to really take that seriously and expand and look at programs that are available from the state and from the feds. And you know, if we are lucky enough to get some stimulus dollars coming in, we should definitely look at how we can use those to ramp up our homeless support. Thank you. Houseless support, sorry.
Thank you. Gabe.
Thank you. One of the things that's difficult in Petaluma has struggled with is we have very strong nonprofits down here that do great work. And myself and Kevin McDonald have been fighting at the county level to make sure that our dollars are equitably split. And so Petaluma gets the services from the county and gets the fair share of funding from the county dollars down here to Petaluma. COTS is a phenomenal organization, but they're not a Petaluma organization. They serve all folks throughout the county, but oftentimes the funding allocation from the county is done as though it just serves Petaluma. And you know, COTS takes in families from Sonoma Valley, from Santa Rosa, from the Russian River area, from all over, but continues to be funded as though it only serves Petaluma. And so with hopefully the passage of Measure O, we can see more funding for services and can expand those services and get folks out of the street and into housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabe. Robert.
Yes, I actually agree with Mike Healy on the expansion of the Mary Isaac Center. I would love to see something like JobLink, especially for high school graduates, not just houseless individuals, but younger people trying to get jobs. I have a few connections in labor and trades. I'm pretty sure we can get a lot of folks on board with job training and, you know, teaching kids or young adults to, get a job. It's as simple as that. I mean, I help out the local high school to try to give the kids the skills to succeed in life, not just, a linear look at it. I just, have their hands and minds work together so they can earn a living and when they're out on their own, because it's only a matter of time before they're houseless if they don't have the skills to do that.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you to all of our candidates for your thorough responses. And unfortunately, we cannot get to every question in the Q&A, but we would like to get all of your closing remarks as we're here now hitting the time towards the end of our forum. So to wrap up our evening, please offer a closing remark and you will be given 1 minute each. We will begin with Kathy and then Brian, Lizzie, Gabe, Robert, Susan, Mike, and we'll close with Dennis. Okay, yeah, Kathy, you may begin with your closing statement.
Thank you. And I want to thank you guys again for hosting this forum tonight. It's been a pleasure to be here and participate. As I mentioned, I've been on the city council for 8 years. I was on the planning commission before that. So I've basically been involved in city government for about 15 years. And during that time, I've come to understand what government can do and what government can't do. And we are living in very difficult times right now. We're dealing with a pandemic. We're dealing with an affordable housing crisis. We're dealing with the climate crisis and wildfires that are the result of that climate crisis. And, it's really important that the people who serve on your council are able to hit the ground running, and they know what they're doing, and they know about the city's budget, and they know all of the information that they need to know to get moving forward and keep the city moving forward. And so I ask that you vote for me, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Brian?
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and thank you to Generation Housing and the Wine Country Young Dems. There's certainly a lot of barriers to housing, but one of the chief responsibilities of the City Council is to enact policy. And that means that if we can change the City Council members, we can get some new ideas floating in there. And we can build the political will to make changes and change these barriers into opportunities. And that's how I see this. I see this election, I see housing. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for Petaluma to do better. And I know we can. And I'd be honored to have your vote. Please go out and talk to your neighbors, your families, and your friends. We have so much at stake in this election. We need to vote like it. We need to campaign like it. And it's going to be all of us, the people on this call and the people that are out there in our community that are going to make Petaluma what it is into the future, 20 years down the road. Thank you so much. I would be honored to have your vote. Good night.
Thank you. Lizzie?
Thank you so much for hosting us here tonight. It's been a pleasure. We must start by tackling our affordable housing crisis with a strong new general plan. We must have the professionalism and experience that I bring in order to build that framework. Old thinking will not get us there. We need experienced, creative ideas, and the incumbents have shown that they cannot bring that. Your vote is critical tonight, not just at the national level, but at the local level. Vote for me for a vibrant, fresh, smart future. LizzieWallach.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gabe?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present my ideas and what I think is the right direction for Petaluma. I agree with Lizzie Wallach that it is very important to vote at the national level. We are facing an unprecedented election in which we have candidates that are attacking on the regular the rights of LGBT and immigrant communities, and it's important to make sure we get out and vote to make sure that the current occupant of the White House is not there for the next 4 years. That being said, I would like to continue to serve on the Petaluma City Council and continue to bring my background, expertise, and experience to the council, and continue to work to bring more affordable housing and more housing opportunities for folks that live here, and continue with the job growth that we've seen in Petaluma. With the exception of COVID, we've seen great growth in the job market here in Petaluma and opportunities for people to thrive in our community. Thank you very much for your support, and make sure you go out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Susan, and then I believe Robert. Yeah, Susan, then Robert.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this evening's forum. It's really been a pleasure. And we started with Jesus discussing the challenges our families are facing, our individuals are facing with housing. There are no easy answers. In addition to that, we are in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic. We will continue to have to address emergencies through wildfires and climate change impacts. And we need strong leadership from our Petaluma City Council. I've lived in Petaluma for 20 years. I have 2 master's degrees, one in communication, another in healthcare. I founded 20 years ago, co-founded a nonprofit that is action-oriented and has achieved significant innovative things for Petaluma. I also lead another conservation organization that's countywide. I have many relationships through these organizations, statewide, regionally, and please go to susankirkspetaluma.com to learn about my experience and what I can bring to serve you, our community.
Thank you, Susan. Robert.
I'm Robert Conklin. I'm a 4th generation Petaluma kid. I just wanted to bring the voice of a working family individual to the city council. I'm thrilled that Gabe Kearney is on the city council. He grew up here. Brian Barnacle grew up here. Myself, I grew up here. We have that little voice in the back of our head that nags us to do the right thing when it comes to the city. Unfortunately, it also comes with consequences of, you know, every decision is pained because you want to try to make everybody happy and you got to look these people in the eye in the grocery store. You know, hopefully everybody here, I respect them. I appreciate their time and their hard work in their campaigns because it's rough and, you know, nasty things are said about you and it's tough. I hopefully there's more Petaluma kids that step up next time to take care of the city. And if anything, you know, these are your candidates. Choose wisely.
Thank you, Robert. Mike, and then we will close with Dennis.
Thank you. So I have a very strong track record of supporting housing in this town, both market rate and affordable. And I think it's worth noting that in my time on the city council, I've served with a bunch of self-described progressive council members who have enthusiastically voted against housing, both market rate and affordable. And that's part of the culture, the unfortunate political culture of this town. We have this idea that we make the unattainable perfect the enemy of the achievable very good. And that's something that I've seen over and over and over again. And that we can't afford that if we're going to actually achieve the kinds of affordable housing that we need going forward. I'm happy to say I'm endorsed by Congressman Huffman, by State Senator Dodd, by the Petaluma firefighters and police officers, by the Petaluma local of Unite Here, by the Petaluma Argus Courier, and I respectfully request your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Dennis.
Thank you. And thanks to Generation Housing and to the Wine Country Young Democrats for hosting this forum. And thanks to everyone who attended. Why should you vote for me? I'm tenacious and work hard for the common good. I champion the right for everyone to live in a fair and equitable society. I believe housing is a human right. I want our children to have a future in Petaluma. And I truly believe that we're all in this together. I'm also endorsed by our Congressmember Jared Huffman, our current and two previous mayors, Sonoma County Conservation Action, the Sonoma County Democratic Party, the North Bay Labor Council, the Latino PAC, and many other groups and individuals. The complete list is on my website, postgaforcouncil2020.com. When you mark your ballot, please vote for a candidate who reflects your values. Please vote for me, Dennis Posake, for City Council. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And we'd like to thank everyone again for joining us this evening and bringing your vision on for housing in Petaluma. And with that, we'll go back to Jesus.
Hey everyone, just popping out from behind the curtain here. So thank you again for being with us this evening. We're a little bit over time, so again, just want to thank everyone for sticking with us a few extra minutes beyond the hour. We heard from all the candidates this evening about their ideas and vision for housing, and we're really, really grateful that everyone took time to be with us to discuss this really important topic. And it's for that reason that I want to share with everyone and make a pitch to visit Generation Housing's website. We are a membership-driven organization, so we count on everybody in Sonoma County to help drive and shape the agenda that we have developed and will continue to develop in order to increase the supply, the diversity, and affordability of housing in Sonoma County to make sure that everybody who lives here or wants to be here is able to live and afford and be in Sonoma County. So we'd love to have folks join Generation Housing. Again, the sweater that I have on right now, it's some cool swag. With that also is part of the membership. So check out Generation Housing. I'll drop the link here in the chat function and want to encourage folks to check us out and join us as members as well. So with that, again, I want to thank everybody for being with us. And I know Elizabeth, thank you for doing an excellent job moderating this evening, and to Gabriel who has also been working overtime doing Spanish interpretation. So thank you to Gabriel. And I will turn it to Elizabeth to close us out with a couple of final words for this evening.
Thank you. And we also encourage you to visit our social media channels as well with the Wine Country Young Democrats, as well as our sister organization, the Wine Country Young Voters. In our channels, you can also stay up to date on local housing and local housing issues. Thank you, Jesus. There we are. And we'll be posting a video recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel. I apologize for the delay on our other videos, but it'll be up on there shortly. You may also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And and again, for anyone who may have missed tonight's forum, please share that video with anyone who has not been able to join us this evening. So that being said, we want to thank all of you who have joined us this evening. We hope this has been an informative experience, as it has been for me. And thank you again, Petaluma City candidates, for your thorough responses. And it was a lot to learn tonight. So thank you all. Have a good evening and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be
Thank
well,
you very
everyone.
much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And at the end of the day, I've got nothing more to say. At the end of my line, there's a clearing in my mind.